But for today, it's definitely going to be a culinary-focused class. I had two special guests that are going to be joining me up in the kitchen from George Brown College, the Culinary Nutrition Management School. So one of the students was actually in my class last semester. So he's under immense pressure today to perform. But I know that you're going to welcome both of them. And we'll start off just by doing a quick intro. We're doing a spring theme class today. Even though it might not seem like spring outside, we want to definitely get it kick-started into gear. So they've prepared some delicious spring-forward recipes, lots of fresh flavors, a lot of green ingredients, and they're very tasty. I can attest to it. Yeah, we'll invite our first student up. So Lucas Hum, thank you very much for joining. Welcome. The stage is yours, sir.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Lucas Hum. I'm a George Brown. I go to George Brown College. I am in the Culinary Nutrition Management program, and I will be graduating in a couple weeks.
I passed him if anyone was concerned. Yeah.
So nothing screams spring like the color green. We think of all these beautiful flowers blooming, the rich green color. So what we have today here is an asparagus and leek soup. So the two stars are asparagus and leek. Nothing screams spring like the beautiful chlorophyll-rich colors here. So
who likes asparagus, by the way? Yes? Okay, maybe we'll like half. I saw a few hands pop up. Definitely one of the first things to pop out of the ground in the spring, right? And it can be a little challenging to cook them. Sometimes people are afraid of the side effects of asparagus that you may experience, but they are very, very tasty, and I was very excited when Lucas mentioned that he's going to make a really nice creamy soup out of this. So why don't you walk us through the steps?
All right, let's spring into it. So I already have here.
Better than my jokes.
You'll be getting a lot of those today. So what I already have here, we're first going to start off with a pot with a little bit of olive oil, and I already caramelized my leeks here, and I seasoned it with a little bit of salt and pepper.
And we have a medium. Is it a medium heat? What are we working with?
Well, you can do it with a medium heat. If you have more time, caramelizing your leeks is amazing. On a low heat, slowly develop those aromatic, delicious flavors. And I use leeks today instead of onions because not many people know when you caramelize leeks, caramelizing in general on a low heat breaks down those.
Well, the sugars come out.
The sugars
come out. It becomes a lot sweeter. Has anyone used leeks before? Yeah, definitely another sign of spring as well. And again, one of the stars of Lucas's soup. You can definitely use onions in replace of leeks. But like Lucas said, it does get a little sweeter when you do cook it down. It almost has like a butteriness to it as well. But the exact same technique will work if you use just regular onions. The thing with leeks, it's a little different in terms of cleaning them, and something that you definitely want to pay attention to, right?
So not many people know leeks are growing out of the ground. So definitely when you're preparing them, rinse them, cut them in half, and then you can sometimes see that there's mud and dirt traps. So it's very important that you go through each layer and thoroughly rinse through before you cook it.
One thing Lucas did, I want to point to, he left the root intact. If you just split it completely down the middle, the layers would actually start to fall apart and it becomes a little challenging to collect everything up and cut it. So he actually just split it right until the root stopped, and that way he can access the layers and clean them out, and then just chop it up as you normally would. So that was about 5 minutes cooking the leeks just until softened. I'll tip it so you guys can see. I know the cam's zooming in there. That's a nice shot. Thank you in the back. So just until softened. Still a little green, and you have a little bit of browning on it, but not too much.
Not too much. So something to pay attention to, know when you're cooking with vegetables especially that are rich in chlorophyll, that you don't want to overcook them. the longer you cook them, the more discolored they get and they lose their vibrant color. So we want to be very careful and watch that we aren't overcooking them because we want that beautiful bright green. Nothing screams spring like green. So next, what we're going to do here is I'm going to turn up the heat and we're going to add our asparagus. So the asparagus, have many of you folks used asparagus before? Yes. So with asparagus, there's the snapping technique because near the end it can be very fibrous and tough. But I don't like using the technique because sometimes you can lose a lot of your product. So a good indication is about 1.5 to 2 inches. We're gonna get a knife and just cut it right there. Usually you can feel the give of where it stops.
Does anyone know what the snapping technique is? Not everyone might know. Some of you. So it is, you see it in some recipes where they bend the asparagus and it'll snap at the point where you have the tender part to cook with in one hand and the woody part you discard in the other. But if you do it with every asparagus, you'll find that it snaps sometimes like right in half.
Yeah. And
you lose a lot of the asparagus on the bottom. So that technique we found it doesn't really work the best. But yeah, 1.5 inches, like Lucas said, off the bottom. But you don't have to throw those woody parts out. You use them actually in your stock.
As well as the trimmings is with the leeks, with the root as well.
And the leek tops.
And the leek tops.
Yeah.
Do not throw them out.
Yeah.
So for today's soup, we prepared earlier a beautiful vegetable stock right over here. And I utilize all the trimmings. And so what we have here is all the trimmings from what we used and just slowly simmering it about an hour or so just to fully maximize your product and develop those delicious flavors, which we then use again for our soup. So while we are cooking these, you want to cook it for about 5 minutes until soft. And I see Jeremy's grabbing our peas.
This is our secret weapon for any green soups.
So a lot of people may not know that peas, well, we all know that they're pretty cheap. They're very low cost. They're beautiful, green, delicious. They add such a delicious creamy texture as well to, I'm just gonna add them right in. And then I call it my secret weapon. We're also gonna add, can anyone guess what this is?
Yeah,
is it that far away? Okay, so what I have here is some roasted garlic. Roasting your garlic, it not only reduces the hassle of having to peel every clove, but it already, so all I did was wrap it in tin foil, leave it in the oven for about 15 minutes, and then you got this beautiful smooth garlic, which we're gonna add in here. And it develops not only a delicious aromatic in the kitchen, a delicious smell, but also creates so much flavor in your soup.
So the roasting of the garlic takes a little bit of the heat away as well. In the recipe, I know that we put just a garlic clove minced. You can definitely go that route if you like that heat from the garlic. I grew up eating garlic, I think, from a baby, so I enjoy the heat, but not everyone does like the heat, and it can be a little bit aggressive. So by cooking it, slowly cooking it out until it's nice and sweet, you get a lot of that heat out of the garlic. So it's not as aggressive, and like Lucas mentioned, it's going to bring out a lot of sweetness out. And it's delicious in the soup. We use it actually just like as a spread, sometimes on like a little piece of bread. It's so tasty, really, really tasty that way. Okay, so Lucas has the peas in there, the asparagus, some of the leeks, his garlic, lots of green that you guys can see on the camera there. And then how do we finish this off?
So now we're gonna add some of the vegetable stock in there, our beautiful stock that we made. So I'm just gonna go on and pour this over.
Just carefully pour it over. So the vegetable stock, like Lucas mentioned, you can use the bottoms of the asparagus, the tops of the leeks. Just make sure you wash everything well. If you're collecting some of those scraps and you're not ready to make a stock yet, just stick it in the freezer. Put it in a Ziploc bag. Anytime we have like carrot ends or some of the onion peels that we don't use, I just start to collect them in the freezer. And once the bag is full, then we'll make a huge batch of stock. And that stock can be frozen, and you can use it for these soups like this or for something else in the future, but it holds really well. Nice.
All right. So we're just gonna cook this down a little bit.
So we're cooking this for how long now?
About 5 minutes until the asparagus is soft so that it's easy to blend and puree.
Now, if you cooked it longer, would that be a problem?
Yes, it would. Because these, once again, are chlorophyll-rich vegetables, which then lose their color over time. So we really do want to watch and be careful that we don't overcook them. Otherwise, you get that dull green color. But we want to go for that bright, vibrant green.
Right. So the chlorophyll, that's the greenness, if you don't know, in these vegetables. And you're right, you want to keep it nice and vibrant green. So we're saying about 5-10 minutes, just until it's softened and it purees really easily. Asparagus can be pretty fibrous. So if you find that you do get a lot of strands in it, you can always sieve that through so that it's not as stringy as a soup. Really nice. Okay, so what's the next step?
Well, the next step, we're gonna make our delicious tangy yogurt. So this is similar to like a creme fraiche or like a sour cream. What we have here is we got some yogurt, got some beautiful chives here, and then lemon. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna put some lemon zest on here, my rasp.
And we're using Skyr. Has anyone heard of Skyr before? Some of you. So you're starting to see it in grocery stores now. It's an Icelandic yogurt. It's sort of, I would say, the competitor to the Greek yogurts now. So your high protein yogurts. I find that this one has less of an aftertaste. Some Greek yogurt I find does have like a little bit of an aftertaste at the end. This one is nice and clean. They have like the plain varieties, really, really tasty on its own, but great technique to use to make soups a little bit creamier or sauces a little bit creamier. And they have different fat versions. This is like a non-fat version, but it does add a nice little punch to the end of the soup for sure. So we have lemon zest. That's all I smell right now, which is fantastic. We're mixing that up, and then we're adding. Are you adding any lemon juice as well?
Yeah.
I'll cut that up for you.
Okay.
Perfect. Now citrus is a nice way to enhance flavors. We think about salt as a flavor enhancer, right? Salt doesn't really add flavor, but it actually picks up and highlights flavor. Acid is another one that does the exact same thing. It picks up and highlights flavors. So for something like this soup, which is going to be rich in the asparagus flavor, this lemon juice is just going to help to pick that up and brighten it up a little bit. Lemon juice, lime juice, orange juice, they all work pretty much the same way. With frozen vegetables. So if we're making, or if we're reheating a frozen soup, or we're adding frozen vegetables to a soup, the freezing process sometimes also dulls the flavor a little bit. It makes it kind of mute. A little bit of acid added to it is going to help to, again, pick it up a little bit and make it really, really nice and fresh. So it's a great way to, challenge yourself to go through the freezer. I'm sure you have things in there from like 2 years ago. I know I have them buried in the back. But some of the more recently made ones, you can still make them taste like you just made them fresh with just a little bit of lemon juice.
And now we're going to add some beautiful green chives.
Very nice.
Great color. Also gives some great flavor as well.
So the fresh herbs are, again, another great technique, sort of livening it up a bit. You don't have to use chives. What other herbs can you use in something like this? I know that some of you hate cilantro, so maybe we'll... Yeah, I know that was going to disturb someone. Sorry, which one? Dill. Yeah, dill would be really nice. Mint, I heard. Mint would be fantastic. Basil. A lot of the fresh, we call them like summery herbs. The soft leaf herbs would work fantastic in a dish like this. Beautiful.
Who's hungry?
Yeah. So, are you ready to plate?
I am.
Fantastic.
Okay.
So, Lucas blended this ahead of time. If you have a hand blender, you can bring that to the pot. It's a little bit safer. Otherwise, if you just have a stand blender, just carefully ladle the soup ingredients into the stand blender. I find that the stand blender actually purees a little bit better. It's just going to take a little bit more time. So it's super, super green, which I love. Really nice color. And you can serve this chilled as a nice chilled soup. Be really comforting. Or Lucas, you're serving this just above warm?
Just warm, only because we also have our yogurt garnish as well.
Right.
We don't want it to separate. We don't want it, unless you want to. But also, I also suggest too, if you really want to make this really creamy, make some more of this and then add it in. Gives it that nice creaminess as well.
Beautiful.
So we're just gonna.
Fantastic. Look at that color. It looks almost like pureed avocado, the green.
Reminds me of back at home.
So a little bit of that yogurt on top. Beautiful.